Summary of the Golden Age by Joan London. Frank Gold, a little boy suffering from polio, is a patient at the Golden Age, a children's hospital located in Perth, Australia, in the year 1953. Frank is awake during the institution's sleep period. He checks on his friend Elsa as he rolls through the halls in his wheelchair, but he doesn't see her. He then sneaks a cigarette from his mother and goes outside to smoke it. The Golden Age used to be a pub, but because there are more people with polio, the government turned it into a place for people to recover. Children who have survived polio but whose parents work too much to help them get better or who live too far away to get care in their homes live there. Frank came here after a stay at the IDB, which is a hospital for adults. The hospital feels far away from everyday life, but it is a happy place that gives the children fair shelter and homey comfort. In the meantime, Elsa was soothing a baby called Rema who was crying. Elsa is a good nurse because she has always taken care of her younger sisters. She knows that Rema is crying because she wants her mother because she has always done that. She tells the baby to look out the window at the sky, and as she does so, she thinks of her own mother. Elsa has felt distant from her parents and everyone else since she got polio, and she thinks that Rema also has to learn to be alone. Frank's parents, Ida and Meyer Gold, are just getting home from work as the kids eat dinner at the Golden Age. After World War II, the Golds were Jewish-Hungarian refugees who wanted to go to America. They have never felt at home in Australia. Ida was a great musician before the war. Now, Meyer wants her to play for him. Ida says she doesn't want to play. She hasn't since Frank got sick. Frank sneaks out of the Golden Age after dinner to write poems. Frank became a poet in the IDB after he met Sullivan Backhouse, an older boy who was crippled all over and had to stay in an iron lung. In the IDB, Sullivan told Frank about the personal poems he wrote in his head, and Frank was drawn to Sullivan's humble approach to art. Sullivan was the son of a wealthy Australian official, and before he got polio, he was a prefect at a boarding school with great chances. Sullivan seemed to be getting better for a short time, but one night he got a fever and died. Frank starts to think about Budapest during the war after he thinks about Sullivan. He and Ida lived for a long time in a small room in the Jewish ghetto. When the Nazi party that ran the city did a big roundup, Ida hid Frank with her piano teacher, Julia Marai. Even though Julia and her friend Hedwiga were nice, Frank felt exposed because he had never been away from his mother. Ida missed Frank, but she thought things were simpler now, alone, so she sent food packages to Meyer, who was working in a labor camp in the Ukraine. One day at Julia's house, Frank had to hide in the attic while Julia taught piano. This scared Frank so much that he didn't talk for a few days. In February 1945, when the Russians took over Budapest, Ida went to Julia's house to get Frank. The bombs had hit the apartment building, but they had been living in the basement. Meyer also lived through the war, and now he often says that he and his family are a lucky family. But during the war, everyone in Meyer's extended family died except for two of his brothers. Frank remembers that his parents stopped by the Golden Age on his first Sunday there. Ida was stressed and worried because she could tell Frank wasn't happy, and Frank was glad she left. After visiting hours, all of the kids were emotionally spent because seeing their families made them realize how much they had changed. Frank thought about how he and his parents had lived with strangers for most of their lives, and how the Golden Age was too small to give him any real privacy. He saw Elsa while he was moving around aimlessly in the halls. Even though she was in a wheelchair, she seemed graceful. Frank's eyes filled with tears, and then he came up with the title for a new song. Frank and Elsa became friends right away. Now, he likes how calm and peaceful she seems to be, and she likes how confident and knowledgeable he is about other cultures. Sister Olive Penny is getting ready for bed when one of the new constables, who is also her lover, taps on her window. Sister Penny likes to have sex, but she quickly gets dressed afterward. She has many boyfriends, but she doesn't let them get in the way of her life or work. Alan Penny, her husband, died in the first days of the war, So Sister Penny and their daughter, Elizabeth Ann, had to move in with Enid, Sister Penny's mother-in-law. Sister Penny started having trysts, so when Enid died, she gave her house to a distant cousin as a way to get back at her. Sister Penny moved to the Golden Age, and Elizabeth and went to live with a friend and go to college. Since then, Sister Penny hasn't felt close to her daughter. Nursing, which she had planned to give up when she got married, has become the most important thing in her life. Frank, who is smart and old for his age, gets bored in class and kills time by disagreeing with the teacher and watching Elsa. He stops being ashamed of being a cripple when he looks at her. He sneaks out of class to go see Elsa in the therapy bath, but the therapist, Lydia, throws him out without a second thought. Frank knows that he has a tendency to get into trouble and thinks that his time in the hospital is coming to an end. Meyer plans to walk to the Golden Age in the evening. Even though he doesn't want to miss Hungary, the dry scenery of Australia makes him sad and makes him feel like he'll never be at home again. When he gets there, he sees that Frank looks a lot like Ida. But Frank gets along much better with Meyer than with his difficult mother. Meyer runs into Sister Penny as he's leaving. He thinks she's pretty and interesting. They have something in common, but don't talk much when they're apart. On the same night, Elsa's worried mother, Margaret, shows up at the hospital. She has been planning and traveling all day to get there. Margaret is very close to her oldest daughter, whom she loves very much. Still, Elsa feels like she is being invaded by the unplanned visit, and Margaret is sad that her daughter is growing up so fast. As Margaret is leaving, she thinks that Elsa is the compensation for everything, from the boring chores to her husband Jack's bad moods. So that the nurses can spend Christmas with their families, Frank's parents serve Christmas lunch at the Golden Age. On the piano, Ida plays Christmas songs. Sister Penny comes home early from dinner with Elizabeth and her friend's family. It was a stuffy event, and Sister Penny noticed that her daughter was in love with the oldest son of the family. She's glad to see him, and as he watches Ida play, Meyer feels sad that she lost her job. Sister Penny decides that Ida should play a show to raise money for the hospital because she is a pro. After stressed days with their families, the kids who went home for Christmas come back tired and grumpy. Their families treat them like invalids or expect them to get better faster. Frank sneaks over to Elsa after bedtime and lies down next to her. Elsa tells him her beginning story. One day, Elsa got sick during her tennis lesson, and when she got home, she passed out in the yard. Elsa's younger sister, Sally, was mad that her bigger sister was getting lessons, so she yelled at and kicked Elsa until a neighbor stopped them. Frank gives Elsa a kiss after hearing the story. The nurses take the kids on a field trip to the ocean. Everyone likes it except Elsa, who has always lived near the ocean and is now reminded of things she'll never be able to do again. Frank spends the whole day thinking about poems, and he realizes that Elsa is now the source of all his ideas. Meyer stops by the hospital with a box of soft drinks as a treat, but he doesn't know that the kids are away. When he's having a soda with Sister Penny, he thinks she's beautiful and cool, but she can tell that he's going through a hard time. The therapist, Lydia, suddenly drowns in a boat accident. All of the kids are saddened by her death because it tells them that they are alone in fighting polio. Soon after, the Queen of England goes to Perth, but she can't take gifts or eat food because there are more and more polio cases in the city. Everyone, including Frank, is mesmerized by all the noise caused by her entrance. The Queen leaves the city without getting sick, and the press talk about a Jewish doctor named Joan who is working on a polio vaccine. Ida, who hasn't played in public for years, is busy getting ready for a show at the Golden Age. On the day of the event, she wears a new dress that makes her look proud and impressive. She looks down on the small venue, but she is also eager to give the best show she can. The kids and their parents are quickly drawn in. Frank likes and respects his mother more than he thought he would. Meyer is proud of both Ida and Frank, but when he sees other patients with big families, it makes him think of his brothers and parents who died in the war. After the concert, a very young boy runs away from the hospital. At the same time, the father of another girl shows up unexpectedly to take her home. These moves make the kids and nurses feel like things are out of order and unstable. Sister Penny isn't happy, so she spends the day with one of her friends. When she gets back to the hospital, she finds that a nurse saw Frank and Elsa kissing in bed and told the board. Frank and Elsa are both kicked off the board. The trustees ask Elsa questions to try to prove that Frank was the only one to blame for what happened, but she won't say anything against him. After 2 mistakes in a short amount of time, Sister Penny knows she needs to start looking for a new job. Frank goes to the library every day because he is bored and lonely at home. He has gone back to the place where he grew up, but he doesn't feel close to that part of his life or to his folks. Also, he is very aware of his condition when he is around so many people who don't have it, and he worries about going to a regular school. On a hunch, Meyer goes to the beach, where he sees Sister Penny swimming. While Elizabeth is getting married, she is going to a hospital in a different city. Meyer tells Sister Penny that she showed him how to live here. Even though they like and respect each other, they leave quickly in their own cars. Ida finds Frank in the garden, listening to the birds. Frank tells Ida that the bird song sounds like "You're just in the way." Ida is worried that this is a sign of sadness, so she calls Margaret Briggs and makes plans for the Golds to come over for tea. Elsa feels lonely and out of place at home, just like Frank, and she worries that people see her as a cripple. Still, she likes being close to her mother and starts to talk to Sally again. Even though the planned meeting is awkward, Frank and Elsa are happy to see each other again. The adults run outside to help Margaret bring in the laundry as it starts to rain. Frank and Elsa rush into a secret bower of trees and kiss when their parents are busy with something else. Even though they will spend the rest of their lives apart, they both feel better when they are together. Years later, Elsa's son Jack goes to New York to see Frank, who is now an old artist. Jack says that his mother has been a doctor for a long time and is now retired. Up until a year ago, she could walk and swim. She likes Frank's books, too. Jack is the editor of an online Australian literary magazine, and he loves Frank's poems very much. He talks to Frank about his new book, The Golden Age, in a conversation. Frank says that he thinks of this collection as the sequel to his most famous work, The Trains, which is also the name of the part about his childhood in Hungary. Frank goes to the window when Jack leaves and watches him disappear into the crowd on the street.
About the author. Joan London was born in Perth, Western Australia, just after World War II, the same city that serves as the setting for the Golden Age. She attended the University of Western Australia, where she majored in English and French language and literature. Before writing books, London put together a number of collections of short stories. Her work has won many awards, including the coveted Australian Patrick White Award, 2015. London lives and works in Fremantle, Western Australia.
Hope we summarized it fully and you liked it. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so that we are motivated to create more videos.